Here is your full expanded story, 2100 words, no headings, simple and natural. Every woman in the kingdom had the right to say no to the Alpha King, and every single one of them did. Not because he was ugly, not because he was cruel. King Cailan was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself the way mountains carry snow, quietly, and with the kind of weight that made people step back without knowing why. He was not the kind of man you looked at and felt nothing. He was the kind of man you looked at and quickly looked away. The problem was the rumors. People said he was cursed. They said any woman who bonded with him would suffer. They said the last 3 choosing rights had ended with every candidate walking away, one by one, heads down, refusing to meet his eyes. No one said it to his face, of course. You do not tell a king he frightens people. You simply find reasons to be busy when his name comes up. So the court moved around him like water moves around a stone. Carefully, at a distance, always finding a way to go somewhere else. Cailan said nothing about any of it. He ruled his kingdom, signed his documents, and sat at the head of a very long table every evening, eating alone. 3 years of this, maybe more. At some point he had stopped counting. He did not know that the curse was never real. He did not know that the man sitting 2 seats to his left at every council meeting, Lord Fenwick, his chief advisor, the man who managed his schedules and whispered in the ears of his staff, had built that story brick by brick, on purpose, over years. Fenwick needed Cailan alone, a king with no bond, no mate. No one beside him who truly knew him, was a king who could be managed, and Fenwick had been managing him beautifully. What Fenwick had not planned for was a girl from the low quarter, with a stolen ledger, and very bad luck with directions. Her name was Sarah. She was not royalty. She was not powerful. She was an Omega, from the dusty, underfunded, half-forgotten edge of the kingdom, where the roads turned to gravel, and the market stalls closed early, because there was not enough to sell. She had grown up knowing exactly how much the palace did not think about people like her, which was a lot, considering that she could trace at least 3 separate supply failures back to someone skimming grain from the district deliveries before they arrived. That someone was Fenwick. She had found the ledger by accident, tucked into the back of a crate that had been delivered to the wrong address. She had looked at it, understood what it meant, and made the mistake of telling someone she trusted. That person told someone else. And by the next morning, Fenwick's people were looking for her. So she ran. She was good at running. She had been doing it in smaller ways her whole life, running from debt collectors, from landlords, from situations that were about to turn bad. This was just larger and faster, and significantly more life-threatening. She moved through the outer city without stopping, slipped through a checkpoint by pretending to be a laundry delivery, and made it all the way to the palace walls before she realized she had completely lost her sense of direction. She needed to get through, get out, and disappear into the northern roads before nightfall. What she got instead was a servant's corridor that ended at the wrong door. She pushed it open and walked straight into the middle of a full royal court session. The room went silent immediately. 50 or 60 people, all in formal dress, all turned to look at the dusty, breathless, very lost Omega, standing in the doorway with a leather ledger clutched to her chest. At the end of the room, on a raised seat that was not quite a throne, but was clearly meant to communicate something similar, sat Cailan. He looked at her. She looked at him. She did not mean to hold eye contact. It just happened. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. And then something moved in the space between them. Something that had no name in ordinary language, but that every Omega and Alpha in the room felt immediately, like a change in air pressure before a storm. Sarah broke the eye contact first. She took 1 step back toward the door. Cailan raised 1 hand. "Clear the room," he said. He did not shout. He did not need to. Within 90 seconds, there was no one left but the 2 of them. He did not reach for her. He did not stand up. He stayed exactly where he was and looked at her, the way you look at something you have been waiting for, without knowing it. With a kind of careful stillness, like if you moved too fast it might disappear. "You can leave," he said. "The door behind you is unlocked. No one will stop you." Sarah looked at the door, then she looked at him, then she looked at the ledger in her hands, thought about what it contained, thought about who was currently hunting her in the streets outside, and did the math. "I have information," she said. About someone on your council. He did not look surprised. He looked like a man who had suspected something was wrong for a long time, and was finally being told he was right. Sit down, he said. She did not sit, but she stayed. He gave her a room in the east wing. Not a grand room, a practical one, with a window and a lock she controlled from the inside. She checked every exit that first night. She found 3. She noted them all, and then, because she was exhausted and her feet hurt, and the bed was the softest thing she had been near in 2 weeks, she slept for 11 hours. She woke up to a breakfast tray outside her door, with no note attached. This, she found, was how Chenal communicated in the early days, through doing things without explaining them. The tray. The clean clothes that appeared folded outside her door. The quiet knock in the evening. Not entering, just knocking. That meant she was welcome at dinner if she wanted, and equally welcome to stay where she was. She went to dinner on the 3rd night because she was curious about him, and annoyed that she was curious about him. He did not make small talk, neither did she. They sat at opposite ends of a table that was too long for 2 people, and ate in silence for a while, and then he asked her a question about the ledger, and she answered, and he asked another, and she answered that one too, and somewhere around the 4th question she realized they had been talking for an hour. He listened the way people who are used to being talked at, rather than talked to, eventually learn to listen, carefully, with his whole attention, like what she was saying actually mattered. She found this extremely irritating. Lady Marin found her in the garden a week later. Marin was one of the women who had refused the king during the 3rd choosing right. She was direct and calm, and had the kind of face that had stopped apologizing for itself a long time ago. She told Sarah the truth in about 4 sentences. The curse was not real. Fenwick had created the story. He had spread it through the court deliberately, over years, to ensure that Chenal remained isolated and therefore controllable. Chenal believed it completely. Not because he was foolish, but because it had been told to him from every direction by people he trusted. And because, on some level, a man who has spent years watching people leave finds it easier to believe he is the reason than to believe the world has been dishonest with him. Sarah stood in the garden for a long time after Marin left. She thought about a man who had been handed a story about himself. You are dangerous. You will only cause harm. No one will ever choose you. And had simply believed it, because what else do you do when everyone around you is saying the same thing? She thought about how familiar that felt, from the other direction. She had been told her whole life that she was nobody from nowhere, who should expect nothing. She had simply worked around it. But the working around it had cost something, and she knew what that cost felt like. She went back inside. She did not tell Chenal what Marin had said. Not yet. She did not know what to do with it yet. Fenwick moved faster than she expected. One morning she came down to find the court already assembled, and a set of documents on the council table claiming she had stolen from the treasury. The ledger she had carried from the low quarter was being described as a forgery. Fenwick stood at the front of the room, composed and certain, doing what he had always done, building a story and making it feel like the only possible truth. Chenal looked at her across the room, and he said nothing. That silence lasted maybe 5 seconds. It felt longer. It was the kind of silence that answers a question you were afraid to ask. Sarah put the original ledger on the table. The real one. The one with dates and numbers and district names that could all be checked. Read it, she said. Or don't. I'm not going to stand here and argue about who I am. She walked to the gate. She stood there for a while. She had her hand on the latch. She was deciding whether the road north was better than whatever was happening behind her, and she had almost decided yes when she heard footsteps. Not a guard's footsteps, not the measured march of palace staff, but one person walking quickly, and then slowing down as they got closer. She did not turn around. I read it, Chenal said. She waited. All of it. Every number, every district. He was quiet for a moment. People died because of those missing shipments, people in the low quarter. Yes, she said. I didn't know. I know you didn't. Another pause. She could hear him breathing. She could feel the bond pull, still there, still present, a low hum that had been there since the throne room and had not gone away. I believed the story about myself, he said, because it was easier than hoping it wasn't true. If I am the problem, then at least the problem has a shape. At least I understand it. He stopped. I don't want to keep doing that. Sarah finally turned around. He was standing close. No crown, no formal coat. Just him. Looking like someone who had just put something down that he had been carrying for a very long time. You came to the gate yourself, she said. Yes. You didn't send someone. No. She looked at him for 3 full seconds. Then she held out her hand. He took it. The bond completed quietly, without ceremony, without the court watching. Just 2 people at a gate in the early evening, choosing each other without an audience. Back in the council chamber, the ledger was read aloud in full. Every number, every name. Fenwick tried twice to interrupt, and was told, politely and then less politely, to be quiet. By the end of the session, his position was gone, his authority was revoked, and an order had already been signed, redirecting the withheld grain supplies to the outer districts immediately. None of it was dramatic. That was what Sarah noticed. Justice, when it is done properly, does not need to be loud. It just needs to be accurate. She was given a seat on the Distribution Council, the body that oversaw supplies and deliveries across all districts. Not a title, not silk, a seat at a table where decisions were made. That was what she had wanted from the beginning. Months later, she stood in the low quarter watching a delivery cart being unloaded. The right amount, at the right address, on time. Kaylin stood beside her, dressed like no one in particular, drawing no attention. A child nearby looked at him, and then up at Sarah. Who is that? Sarah watched the cart being unloaded for a moment. Someone, she said, who finally stopped listening to the wrong story about himself. The child nodded, satisfied with this, and ran off. Kaylin said nothing, but the corner of his mouth moved, just slightly, in a way that the court would not have recognized, because the court had never seen it before. She had.